Every evening, I set the table for two. A plate for me. A plate for the boy who promised to call. The tea goes on first, jasmine, because he once said it smelled like Saturday mornings. The good cup for him. The chipped one for me. At 6:30, I wipe the phone screen with the edge of my sleeve. Not because it's dirty. Because ritual keeps the house from swallowing me whole. The house knows my footsteps. It knows the way I pause in doorways as if someone might be there. It knows how carefully I turn the lamp, how quietly I breathe when the newsreader says, and now, the local weather. As if weather ever mattered when your child forgets your voice. My name is Renate, 66. Retired. Mother of one. Keeper of a promise I didn't make. Max made it for me years ago, on the day he left. I'll call you every night. Mom, you'll get tired of me. I said I'd never get tired of him. I should have said, don't get tired of me. This town is small enough to memorize. 3 stoplights. A library that smells like paper and patience. A post office with a clerk who calls me dear because he can't remember my name. They know Max. They remember the boy who helped Mrs. Doyle carry her groceries, who lit sparklers on the 4th of July and shouted, "Look, Ma, stars on the street." Sometimes they ask, "How's your son?" I answer the way mothers do, with the truth rearranged. Busy, but good. You know how the city is. What I don't say is, he lives 2 hours away and I miss him like a limb I can still feel. I know the excuses by heart. Work is heavy right now, Mom. My schedule's upside down, Mom. We're figuring things out, Mom. There's always a we now. Her name is Lena. She is braver than me, unapologetic, sharp in a way that cuts and calls it honesty. I taught myself not to hate her. Hate keeps you awake. So does love. I pay their rent. $500 on the 1st of every month for 3 years. Sometimes I add a little extra, and the landlord pretends not to notice. He looks at me over the counter and says, "You're a good mother." He doesn't know that being good feels like being empty. I furnished their apartment, too. A second-hand couch that doesn't look second-hand. A kitchen table with legs that don't wobble if you set your elbows right. I stocked the refrigerator with the first groceries of every new month, the way you stock a hope that refuses to die. Max once called in the middle of a storm. Said the power went out and they ate Campeches by phone light. He laughed. I said the same line I always say when I have nothing to give but a wish. Call me when the lights come on. He didn't. The phone's ringtone is 3 clear chimes. I keep it that way because it sounds like the beginning of a happy ending. Sometimes it rings and it's the pharmacy reminding me about refills I don't need. Sometimes it's a wrong number. Sometimes it's the church asking if I can bake 2 pies for the fundraiser. I always say yes. Saying yes to pies is easier than saying yes to the truth. The truth is, I have turned waiting into work. I have ironed it flat like a tablecloth. I have folded it into drawers and spread it over my bed like a blanket that refuses to warm me. This morning, the sky opened a little. I wiped the porch rail and thought, today will be the day. People who haven't waited will roll their eyes at that sentence. People who have will nod and pour another cup. I keep Max's last voicemail in a folder named Listen When Sad. His laughing in it. He says, "Mom, pick up. I know you're screening my calls." He thinks my silence is a game. He has no idea it's practice. I tried being brave once. Went to the city without telling him. I stood outside their building and pretended to look for an address that was stapled to my chest. I didn't ring. I watched a woman in a yellow coat wheel a bicycle inside and thought, even her bike gets to go home. On the bus back, Lena texted, You should call before you visit. Boundaries are important. I stared at the word boundaries until it stopped looking like English. I did not reply. Some days, I keep my dignity in my pocket like a coin I can't spend. I still buy 2 apples, 2 stamps, 2 paper napkins if I'm eating alone in a diner with a waitress who pretends not to notice. I leave the second napkin untouched and fold it into my coat sleeve, like proof that I remembered someone who forgot me. When people tell me to move on, I ask, move on to where? Grief is not a house you leave. It is a street you learn, one crack at a time. The seasons changed without him. I trimmed the hedges. I painted the bedroom a color called Quiet River. I gave away 3 boxes of clothes and kept the sweater with the frayed cuffs because he wore it one Thanksgiving and said it made him look like a grown man. I am not angry tonight. Anger is loud, and I'm tired of loud. Tonight I am a small lake in late September, still, honest, reflecting what's left of the day. I pour the tea. I turn the lamp. I place the phone where a second spoon should go. 6:30 comes. 6:30 goes. If love had a clock, mine would not tick. It would hold its breath. I tell myself a story so I can sleep. Max is on a late shift. He's standing by a window with his hands in his pockets, promising he'll call when he gets home. He'll say, sorry for the hour, Mom. I'll say, there are no wrong hours for mother. We will both pretend this is normal. We will both be wrong. I have learned to forgive 1,000 small things. The messages that start with, hey, quick question, and end with my bank account later. The pictures on social media where I can count the chairs at a table I helped pay for. The birthdays I spend pressing refresh on a silence that doesn't blink. Forgiveness is not for them. It is a chair I can sit in without collapsing. I know what you're thinking. Why doesn't she stop paying? Why doesn't she stop waiting? Because stopping is a kind of death, too. And I have already buried enough. Outside, the world remembers itself. A car passes, dragging light along the wall like a ribbon. Some way a dog complains at the rain, and the rain wins. I take the phone in both hands, as if it could feel held. I say the same prayer I have said for 742 days. Let the person I love remember how to find me. The prayer doesn't ask for much. A call, a word, a proof that I wasn't a chapter he closed, but a spine that kept his life together when it bent. When the hour turns, I accept what the night has decided. I wash the cup that was meant for him. I dry it carefully. I place it upside down on the rack, a small white dome, an unfinished moon. As I turn out the light, I notice something on the mat by the door. Not a package, not a flyer, an envelope, brown, rain-kissed along the edge where the ink has bled into a secret. There is no return address, only my name, written in a hand I used to help Steady when he learned to write his RS. I do not open it. Not yet. For the first time in months, I want to hear the sound of possibility. Tomorrow, I will know whether hope is a letter or a lie. The envelope sat on the counter all night. I made tea beside it, washed dishes beside it, even prayed beside it. But I didn't open it. Some letters don't arrive to be read. They arrive to remind you that someone out there still knows your name. At dawn, the paper was still damp at the corners. I turned it over once, twice, and whispered, if it's bad news, please let me be strong enough to read it. The knife slid clean through the seal. Inside, one page, folded neatly, and handwriting that didn't belong to my son. Dear Mrs. Carter. It began. Max asked me to send you an update. He's been busy these days. Please know he's doing well. Lena. Just that name on paper felt like someone had dragged a nail across glass. I read it again, slower this time, as if meaning might change under softer eyes. No warmth, no affection, just efficiency disguised as courtesy. At the bottom of the page was a postscript written in smaller, almost smug letters. We've decided to handle our own finances now. You've helped enough. Helped enough. Those 2 words, sharp enough to cut through the steam rising from my cup. I could almost hear her saying them. Polite smile, perfect posture. The kind of tone that means you're dismissed. I walked to the living room. Every corner of that room whispered helped enough. The couch I'd bought. The rug she'd chosen and I'd paid for. The framed photo of them on the shelf, smiling like they'd never heard of gratitude. Then something slipped from the envelope, a small photograph. At first, I thought it was old, but the edges were crisp, fresh from a print shop. Lena in a white dress, Max in a dark suit, confetti caught midair like frozen rain. Behind them, her parents, her siblings, everyone dressed in joy. Everyone except me. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I sat on the floor, letter in one hand, photo in the other, and listened to the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, the whole house pretending not to hear my heart breaking. So it was true. The whispers, the long silences, the careful distance. They'd married months ago and never told me. I pressed the photo against my chest. You could have let me buy my own seat in your happiness. I whispered, instead of making me pay for it blind. Outside, a car passed, spraying water from the gutter. It sounded like applause. Cruel, ordinary applause for other people's news. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it under the sugar jar. Maybe I thought hiding it there would keep it from being real. But the words kept echoing. Helped enough. They didn't know how deep that cut went. They didn't know that every payment I made wasn't money. It was memory. That afternoon, the phone finally rang. My heart stumbled, reached for it before my head could stop me. Not Max. The pharmacy. Refill reminder. Even machines have better timing. I almost laughed. Then I almost screamed. Instead, I set the phone back down, gently, like a wound I couldn't reopen yet. That night, I dreamed of him at 10 years old, holding a toy phone to his ear, saying, "Hello, Mommy." And in the dream, I said, "I'm here." But he hung up anyway. When I woke, the letter was still under the sugar jar, and the house smelled of cold tea and finality. I told myself I'd burn it, but I didn't. I needed proof that love, once ignored long enough, can turn into something unrecognizable. That evening, the postman brought another envelope, bigger, heavier, same handwriting, same city stamp. Inside was a receipt, a bank slip for the latest rent transfer, mine, uncashed, returned. They hadn't even deposited it. Not a thank you, not a word, just rejection, folded neat and mailed back like change I didn't ask for. That's when the calm broke. The kettle boiled over, the tea hissed across the burner. I let something in this house finally spill, without cleaning it up. I walked to the window and watched the rain slide down the glass. Every drop looked like a tiny letter falling from a sky that didn't care who read it. And I said aloud, to no one in particular, if this is what love feels like now, maybe tomorrow I'll stop being the one who waits. The drive to the city felt longer than miles. It felt like the distance between who I used to be and who I had to become before the day ended. I carried the envelope with me, the letter, the photo, the returned rent slip, not as proof, but as armor. Because when love stops being soft, You learn to hold it like a shield. Buildings rose around me, taller, cleaner, faster than I remembered. The city had swallowed my boy whole. Maybe I had mailed him there myself, one wire transfer at a time. Their apartment stood in a glass tower that caught the clouds in its reflection. I pressed the buzzer, and when the door clicked open, I almost wished it hadn't. Lena's voice floated through the hallway before I saw her. Light, careless, like she'd never said my name with anything heavier than politeness. She opened the door in a white blouse, hair pulled back, smile polite enough to sting. "Mrs. Carter, we weren't expecting you." "I noticed," I said. "I got the letter." For a moment her smile faltered. "Max is home," she added quickly. "Come in." The apartment was tidy in a way that didn't feel lived in. Everything positioned, nothing belonging. A faint vanilla candle burned on the table. The scent almost masked the metallic smell of silence. Max looked up from his laptop. When he saw me, his shoulders lifted and fell. "Hey, Mom." 2 words, too easy. Like we hadn't skipped entire years between them. "I drove in because I needed to look you in the eye when I asked. Why send a stranger to speak for you?" He rubbed his temple. "I didn't. Lena thought." "Lena thought," I interrupted. "I see." She stepped closer, chin up, voice smooth. "We just needed some space. He's trying to build something of his own. With my money." The question came out quieter than I meant. Not angry, just tired. Lena's eyes flicked toward Max, waiting for him to handle it. He stayed still, hands in pockets, the same way he did as a boy when he'd broken something he didn't know how to fix. "Mom," he said finally, "I appreciate everything you've done, but you can't keep rescuing me." I looked at him, really looked. The suit, the watch, the slight tremor under all that confidence. The boy I raised was in there somewhere, buried under words someone else had written for him. "I never wanted to rescue you, Maximum. I just wanted to be invited into the life I helped you start." Lena exhaled sharply. "You're always making him feel guilty." I turned to her, steady. "No, dear. Guilt is the heart's way of remembering its debt. It means he still feels something." Max stepped forward. "Mom, please. We're just trying to live our own life." "Then live it," I said. "But don't erase the life that made you capable of having one." No shouting, no tears, just the quiet sound of 3 people standing in a room where love had forgotten its language. I set the envelope on the table. "You left this unfinished. Consider it closed." Then I reached out, touched his cheek the way mothers do when words can't reach any deeper. "You're still my son, Maximum. That doesn't change. But I do." Outside, the air felt lighter, not sweet, but breathable. I walked to the car without looking back. Behind me, I imagined the candle still burning, its flame bending toward the window like it wanted out to. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I let the silence sit beside me in the passenger seat. Calm now, not cruel. It whispered, "You did what you could. Now do what's left. Live." The drive home was quiet. No music, no radio, not even the wipers after the rain stopped. Just the sound of tires on wet asphalt and a heartbeat that refused to calm down. When I reached the house, the porch light was still on. I hadn't realized how long it had been burning. Maybe that's why the bulb flickered when I unlocked the door. Even light can get tired of waiting. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. But it felt different. The furniture sat like witnesses who didn't want to testify. The clock kept time for a world that no longer included me. I placed my purse on the table, the envelope on top of it, and stood there listening to the refrigerator hum. That small sound was my only proof that something in this house was still alive. People say anger is loud. They are wrong. The loudest thing in the world is silence after you've told the truth. 4 days, I moved through the house without a sound. I cleaned what was already clean. I watered the plants until the soil couldn't take another drop. Every evening I still set the table for 2, but the second plate stayed empty on purpose. A reminder, not a hope. I stopped checking the phone. At first because I was punishing him. Later because I realized it no longer hurt as much as it used to. One night I took out an old box from the closet. Inside were letters from Max when he was in college. Pages full of ideas, drawings, questions about how to cook pasta without burning it. I read each one slowly. Every line sounded like a person who still needed me. And then I reached the last letter, the one that ended with, "You're my home base, Mom. Don't ever move too far away." I folded it back into the box and whispered, "You moved first, sweetheart. You moved first." The next morning, I walked into town. The sky was pale and still undecided about rain. At the bakery, the clerk smiled and said, "Haven't seen you in a while." I smiled back and bought 2 rolls instead of 1, not because I expected company, but because hope is a habit that takes time to break. That evening, I sat by the window, watching dusk stretch its long fingers across the street. For the first time in years, I didn't wait for the phone to ring. I didn't even keep it near me. It stayed on the counter, silent, a sleeping creature that no longer demanded to be fed. In that quiet, something unexpected happened. I heard my own thoughts clearly again. Not the worried kind, not the fearful kind. Just my own voice saying, "You survived." I realized I'd spent years waiting for proof that I mattered, when all along, surviving was proof enough. Later that night I wrote in my journal, "Silence doesn't have to be punishment. Sometimes it's the sound of peace learning my name." When I closed the notebook, I noticed the phone light blink once. A missed call. Unknown number. I didn't check it. If it was Max, he could leave a message. If it wasn't, it didn't matter. The quiet between rings had finally stopped screaming. It was just quiet. Peace never announces when it's leaving. It just slips quietly out the back door, the same way love did. 2 weeks passed after the confrontation. Days smooth and ordinary. Tea, errands, folded laundry. I began to believe the storm had finally moved on. Then the phone rang. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in months. Lena. For a second, I almost smiled. The way a wound sometimes aches before rain. Then I answered. Her voice was thinner than usual. "Mrs. Carter, hi. I hope I'm not calling it a bad time." "There's no such thing anymore," I said. "What is it?" She hesitated. The background buzzed. Traffic, wind. "We've had some trouble with the rent. It's overdue. The landlord." She stopped, swallowed hard. "We just need a little help this month. Max is between projects." For a moment I couldn't speak. I looked at the kitchen table, the same place where her letter had once sat, where I had promised myself I'd never let them humiliate me again. My tea had gone cold. The clock on the wall clicked softly, like a metronome marking the rhythm of old habits. "Lena," I said, steady and quiet, "do you remember what your last letter said?" "What do you mean?" "You told me I'd helped enough." Silence. I could almost hear her breathing. "Mrs. Carter, please, it's not like that now." "No," I said. "It is exactly like that. You taught me something important about boundaries." There was a tremor in her voice. "We just need a few days to figure things out." Could you maybe send Lena? The word came out gentler than I expected. I hope you and Max learn what it feels like to stand on your own 2 feet. I tried to teach him that. Maybe this is how he'll finally learn. She didn't answer. The line clicked, and for the first time in years, I ended a conversation before someone else could end it for me. I set the phone down and waited for the guilt to arrive. It didn't. What came instead was a strange lightness, like air returning to a room long sealed. That night I opened the window, let the rain drift in, and whispered into the dark, I am done funding their silence. The next morning I did something small but enormous. I changed my bank auto-transfer settings. 1 click. That's all it took to end 3 years of habit. Then I walked to the mirror. The woman staring back looked the same. Same silver hair, same tired eyes. But something behind them had shifted. You finally chose yourself, I told her. The mirror didn't argue. It simply reflected someone I hadn't met in a long time. A woman who didn't need to be needed to exist. Later, when the phone rang again, I didn't even look at the screen. I let it ring out, and for once the sound didn't hurt. The world has a way of circling back, of returning the echoes we send out when we think no one's listening. A month passed after that call. No messages, no requests, just silence, clean, deliberate, complete. And then, one evening, the phone rang again. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Doyle. She'd heard something from her cousin in the city. Your boy's company closed down, she said softly. A bad investment, I think. He'll be all right, I'm sure. I thanked her and hung up before she could add pity to the sentence. For a long time I sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing, trying to decide what I was supposed to feel. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just the strange stillness that follows a storm you didn't start. A week later, the knock came at the door. Even before I opened it, I knew the rhythm. 3 short taps, 1 pause, then another, the way he used to knock when his hands were too small to reach the bell. When I opened the door, there he was, Max, rain-soaked, unshaven, a single suitcase beside him. Hi, Mom. The words fell between us, clumsy and fragile. I stepped aside. Come in. He sat on the same couch I'd once bought for his first apartment. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The clock filled the room with tiny, merciless ticks. I lost everything, he said finally. Then maybe you'll find something real, I answered. He gave a short, helpless laugh that ended too soon. Lena's staying with her parents for a while. I see. I don't even know where to start. I poured tea, placed a cup in front of him. Start here, I said. Drink. He looked around the house, the photos, the furniture, the quiet, as if he were visiting a museum of his own childhood. You kept everything. Not everything, I said, just what still remembers me. He nodded, eyes down. I was wrong, he whispered. Yes, I said, but wrong can be repaired. Disrespect can't. We talked for a long while. He told me about the company that folded, the friends who vanished, the sleepless nights. And then he said the sentence I'd waited years to hear. I should have called. I thought I was proving I could do it alone. I reached across the table, touched his hand. You don't have to prove you're grown. You just have to prove you're kind. He nodded, tears threatening but refusing to fall. For the first time in years, his silence didn't hurt. It healed. That night I made dinner for 2 again. We ate quietly, not mother and child, not victim and offender. Just 2 people learning how to sit together without guilt. Before bed he said, I'll start looking for work tomorrow. I'll fix things. You'll try, I said. That's enough for now. As I turned off the light, I realized something simple but enormous. Life had punished him more efficiently than I ever could, and forgiveness, when it finally came, didn't sound like surrender. It sounded like breathing. Morning light touched everything in soft gold. The rain had finally stopped. For the first time in years, the house smelled like toast and coffee instead of waiting. Max was already awake, standing by the window. He looked older, but also strangely lighter, like someone who'd put down a heavy box he'd carried too far. "You're up early," I said. "Couldn't sleep," he answered. "Good. Means you're thinking." He smiled, faint but real. We ate breakfast quietly. No apologies. No speeches. Just the sound of cutlery and forgiveness finding its footing. When he finished, he reached into his bag and handed me a folder. "These are all the letters you wrote to me," he said. "How did you get those back?" "I kept them. Every one. I used to read them when things got bad." I opened the folder. My handwriting stared back at me from a younger lifetime. Ink smudged, edges bent. Advice that once felt urgent. Notes about rent, health, love, patience. Every word written by a woman who believed her son was still listening. "You never answered them," I whispered. "I did," he said. "I just never sent the replies." For a moment I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I settled for breathing. He told me everything then, about the pressure, the debts, the mistakes he was too proud to confess. How silence became easier than disappointment, and how, eventually, he convinced himself I'd be happier not knowing. "I thought if I called, you'd hear the failure in my voice." "I would have heard my child," I said. That was all. The room filled with quiet so deep it felt sacred. Sometimes truth doesn't need to be forgiven. It just needs to be spoken. Later that day, he helped me mend the garden fence. The boards were old, but together we straightened them. Every nail we hammered felt like a word we'd finally said right. When we finished, he turned to me and asked, "Mom, how did you keep believing I'd come back?" "I didn't always," I said. "Some days I just kept breathing until belief found me again." That night, as he packed to leave for the city again, this time for work, not escape, he hesitated by the door. "I'll call you tomorrow." "Don't promise," I said. "Just remember." He nodded, kissed my forehead, and was gone. I stood at the window watching the car lights fade, and for once, the emptiness didn't hurt. It simply meant life was moving again, the way it's supposed to. I walked back to the table, set down my cup, and whispered to the room, "He's learning. So am I." Forgiveness, I realized, isn't a gift you give someone who broke you. It's the way you tell the wound it can stop bleeding. The house is quiet again. Not empty, just quieter in a way that feels earned. It's been 2 weeks since Max went back to the city. He keeps his promise this time. Small messages, short calls. Not every day, not perfect, but enough to remind me that distance can soften, not sever. This morning, the phone rang. Just once. 3 clear chimes. The same tone I've kept all these years. I picked it up and smiled before saying anything. "You remembered." He laughed. "I told you I'd call." "You also told me you'd grow up," I said. "Working on that too." We talked about nothing, the weather, the job, the little things that mean everything. And when the call ended, I didn't feel the ache anymore. I felt peace, because I finally understood something. Sometimes, when you stop chasing love, it remembers where you live. Now, when I pour tea for 2, I do it not for who's missing, but for who I used to be. The woman who waited, learned, and finally let the quiet teach her strength. I look at the phone on the table, its small light blinking. It's no longer a symbol of pain, just a tool for connection. And connection is something I'm finally willing to accept on my own terms. And now I want to ask you, listening to this, have you ever waited for someone who never called? Someone who promised they'd stay, but left you staring at a silent phone, a blank screen, an unanswered message? What did you do when the waiting became too heavy to carry? Did you forgive them, or did you finally forgive yourself? Tell me your story below. Share it, because sometimes someone out there needs to know they are not alone in their silence. Your words might help another heart heal tonight. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of your mother, your father, or the person you stopped waiting for, don't leave without subscribing to Hidden Feelings. Every week, we tell stories that feel like they belong to all of us. Stories about love, distance, family, and the quiet spaces in between. You've been listening to Hidden Feelings. Sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that stay the longest. Until next time, keep the light on and keep your heart open.